Hello readers, welcome back to PJL Books and welcome to today's Off the Shelf. Today's topic is going to be nailing an ending. Now as this year winds down and the new year approaches, I imagine that on the minds of most of you is not just new beginnings but also endings, yeah? No? Just me? Alright, well if that's the case then that probably just reinforces my point further, and that point is that we humans are generally quite good at starting things, but we're terrible at finishing them. And this is especially true of entertainment. Think of how many movies, TV series, and of course books you can think of that started off with a bang, but ended in a pathetic whimper, or worse still, didn't end at all, but just faded away as everyone lost interest. I think that's because when we're incubating a new idea for storytelling, the ending is the last thing on our minds. We have the basic crux of an idea, a cool gimmick or a clever setting, maybe even an exciting opener to build from. How many times have you started a new project based around an ending? Not many, I wager. So there's that, and there's our natural aversion to endings. We just don't like things to finish. That sense of finality is just so, final. But it really shouldn't be seen that way. Not only is the ending the second most important component in a story after the beginning, but it also sets the final tone for the moment the credits roll or the back cover is reached. For that reason, last impressions have just as much impact, if not more, than the first impression. For example, how many of you clearly remember how Inception ended? So even though we typically fear story endings because that is the conclusion of the story, a good ending, even if it's ambiguous, can make the audience think about the story long after it's finished, and maybe even return to reread it or rewatch it, so they now have this sense of perspective on the whole thing. And yet, this is probably not news to you. I doubt that this is groundbreaking new fact to anybody hearing this. But it does make you wonder why so many stories set the scene beautifully, have this gripping second act that builds upon that, and then they fall apart in the closing few chapters. And that's a shame really, because that retroactively spoils what was an otherwise perfectly good story up to that point, as it becomes clear that the author was merely spinning his or her wheels without any clear sense of destination. Now I don't claim to have a magic formula for success. If I did, you would have heard about it by now. But I do have an idea for building a strong ending, and it goes like this. When you have the rough skeleton of your plot planned out, even the ending, be careful. Just because you know how this story will end and how it will get there doesn't automatically make it a strong ending. Your project will likely grow organically as you write it, and new ideas will come to mind as you write. So by the time you come to the ending, don't be surprised if your ending feels diminished by comparison. It's like buying a pair of shoes for a growing child, but giving it to them 6 months later. Sure, it was a perfect fit at the time, but not anymore. So here's an idea. When writing your first draft, at some point between the beginning and the midway point, skip ahead and write an ending in full. But don't just write the ending you're expecting to write. Throw in a couple of revelations and twists, even if they don't make sense yet. For example, here we go, off the top of my head. As Izzy charged out of her house and slammed the door behind her, she held her breath until she was out of sight of the windows. When she saw that the car was missing, she collapsed against the wall and burst into tears. Now, I have no idea why Izzy might be rushing from this house, why she is trying to get outside of the windows, and why she would cry at the sight of a missing car. I don't know yet. It wouldn't be completely out of left field from my plan, of course. For example, I would have already planned for Izzy to be my main character, but now I have something to work towards, something which I haven't necessarily explained yet. So not only do I have a more concrete idea of what I'm working towards, but the ending also has some plugins, some openings. It indicates plot points and features that I haven't yet sown the seeds for. So the ending isn't diminished and constricting, but it actually encourages twists and turns in the narrative. Of course, the ending that you just wrote is by no means set in stone. any more than the rest of your draft is. So you don't need to tie yourself in knots to reach for an outlandish twist that you wrote on a whim, you can change it. Regardless, there is no doubting that having an exciting climax that even you as the writer are looking forward to reaching will more likely result in a more satisfying conclusion to the tale. Now, do you have any of your own clever ideas for how you plan and execute the endings to the stories? Let me know. And that is it for today's Off the Shelf. Thank you very much for listening, readers. I am now going to draw an ending to this video audiobook thing. See, I'm terrible at endings. So if you would like to read this on my website, it is in the description below. Thank you very much for listening, readers, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.